coming to fruition.
It's all part of stretching the truth a bit. It's an affliction.
An affliction.
It's an affliction.
Indeed.
Yeah, you're talking about the Wiggles, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
then I did.
Mom.
Yeah, sorry. It's not just me. I'm not just like making this up in my head. This is crazy. So I was like, oh, this is what are we doing here?
Hello and welcome to Hot Nerds. I'm your host, Kieran Hennessy. And with me today is someone who is no stranger to a studio, nor the stage of a club or festival. He's played big Aussie festivals like Splendour in the Grass, Falls Festival, and Groove in the Moo. Is he a singer? Is he a producer? A DJ? A gamer? A writer? A larrikin? A content creator? A hot nerd? All of the above.
Wow, that's big.
We'll find out today. Introducing Mickey Kojak.
Wow.
Mickey, welcome.
What an introduction. That is, all right. It's all downhill from here. It's all downhill from here.
No, I'm sprinting up, baby. Well, I'm sprinting up. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
here.
for having me.
And especially today on the first episode of Hot Nerds.
I'm excited.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
excited.
I'm glad the idea of Hot Nerds excited you.
Well, it's 36 degrees in here, and I'm still I'm embracing the hotness. So that's what you meant, temperature hot.
That's the beauty.
Or spice.
It goes in
something,
all different directions.
Okay,
The interpretations.
good. Yeah.
We're both sweating a bit.
Oh yeah, a little sheen, just a little sheen over us. It's good.
Call us Mr. Sheen, 100%. I wanted to have you in because I know you've got, as the intro spieled, there's quite a few angles that of life that you've taken on, and I wanted to perhaps start. Have you found the perfect preset?
Oh no, not yet. Definitely not. I think the shtick with the perfect preset is there is no such thing as the perfect preset.
And for anyone listening who may not know what a preset is, give us a quick spiel on
So
that.
when you are a nerd like I am, and you love something deeply like, say, synthesizers, which is a big passion of mine, you buy a new synth, you buy a new plugin or something like that, and it will often come with presets. And a preset is something that is already made for you to play. So sounds, it could be like a bass sound or a lead sound or chords, and there are maybe countless, I would say, amounts of presets out there.
Oh, yes.
So I've started playing through all these different presets from all these different synthesizers, testing them out, seeing what they sound like, and just posting that out to the world. And it's been fun. I need to do more of them. I've got a bunch of them in the bank.
Recorded?
And they've had like a really good response online. People find them helpful. It's a good type of, it's a good way for me to sift through the endless trove of potential sources of inspiration as well, I suppose, from a producer perspective. Because often what will happen is you'll buy something, and if you don't use it immediately, it just kind of sifts into like the ether, and you never use it.
It goes into the library wall.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then you just don't go
totally.
grab it again.
And people, it's exactly that. Oh, you've got this book. I've never read it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this book is about.
Or like I have the whole series, but there's a few pages that are still yet to be explored.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So yeah, that's that I don't think that I have found it. I don't think I ever will, but it's about the journey.
Is that not the beauty of it?
Totally.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's just a never-ending series. I'll be doing it until the day I die.
Indeed. So you are a synth nerd.
Yeah, for sure. It's an affliction.
An affliction.
It's an affliction.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And what is the cure?
There is no cure. You just keep going. I don't think it's
something to live with.
What is it? Isn't it? Don't you have to? Acceptance is the first stage of like recovery or something like that.
Is it the last or the first?
I'm not sure. I don't want to know. I actually don't want to find out. But it's big. It's over the years, I couldn't tell you how many I've owned, but at one point I had 24 physical synthesizers in my ownership, and that was when I said 24. I was like, okay, that 2 dozen. That's if I made a calendar, I would have to choose half of these to show in a calendar. And I did. I made a synth calendar showcasing all of them.
Did you actually? I missed that one.
I'll have to send you some pics. They're
That's
pretty
fantastic.
hot.
Is this calendar
I think it was like a 2018 calendar.
2018.
Yeah.
So-
So it's out. It does not work anymore.
But you had it another 12. You could have done
I
it
could've done-
2019.
yeah. And at that point, I said I'll sell half of them, and now I try to just keep it at 12. So if I want to buy a new one, I have to.
sell one.
I have to sell one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I think that is probably the best that I can do in terms of quashing this addiction.
And where do you keep them all?
A lot of them are inhabiting my living room.
Mm-hmm.
You'll often open a drawer, and there'll just be one in there.
So
Some
you're
of-
looking for utensils, some
Oh,
cutlery,
Right
have
next
some
to
guests
right next to
over.
the forks.
Yeah.
You've got like a little one. Some of them are like sort of not statementy ones, but they're big and like they are being used. Like I've got my Fender Rhodes keyboard, which isn't a synthesizer. It's like an electromechanical piano. That's sitting in the living room. It's getting played all the time. It's plugged in. It weighs like 120 kilos. That kind of has to be out.
Yeah.
And then the others, God bless my parents, just letting me inhabit the garage. Half of a garage is like a wall of synths. And then, over the years, always in studios being used. A lot of them are probably being lent out. I don't know where they are.
You can't even keep track of the babies.
I can't. Definitely not.
And your parents with the garage storage, are you living at home or in the city?
No,
at the
I'm
moment?
living close to the city. I'm in Redfern,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
close to all the gigs, all the city happenings of
Indeed.
music and stuff like that. So
Is it
yeah.
essential for because we can talk about quite a few things that you do, but specifically things that earn money as an artist.
Yeah.
DJing is a big part of that.
Sure.
You know, not necessarily as Mickey Kojak
Yeah.
as your artist project,
But just being around the city for DJ gigs and
yeah,
stuff, for sure.
Was it possible to do that from
Yeah.
South Sydney?
Yeah,
as
for
well?
sure. Definitely. So I grew up in like the Sutherland Shire, and all it just meant was that you had to have a car.
Yeah.
And that's such a big Sydney thing anyway. It's like, how are you going to go do all, in my head at least, it was always just, well, you need to have a car if you're going to go to a gig. And it just, it kind of quashed some things, like you couldn't go out and party every night if you wanted to go out and like make money.
Yeah.
Like when you're starting out, you commit, you're like doing the full 6-8 hours of DJing it is, and you just go, okay, I'll have 1 or 2 drinks and I'll drive home at 3 a.m. or whatever it is. Or you don't, and you leave your car there and you just kind of
Go down the rabbit hole.
yeah, and you figure it out like
The next
24
day.
hours later. Yeah.
And that's a bit of a distance to be getting back home
Yeah.
without the car,
Yeah.
and then have to go back to
Yeah.
get the car.
I mean, the train's always an option as well, but I don't, it's a scary thing going back to the Shire on the train, and you have to get the night rider, people throwing up in there and stuff like that. It's not a pretty sight. I've done it a few times and it's not ideal.
Have you thrown up on the night rider?
No, never. No, of course not.
Hey man, those
No,
late
it
nights,
happens to the
you know?
best of us, and it hasn't happened to me. So I mad respect if you can throw up on the night rider, but it is not it's not on my bingo card.
Where's the weirdest place you have thrown up?
You
can remember.
I don't want to out myself for this. Definitely, I've my manager's apartment. He's he was leaving his apartment and he threw a party, and I definitely threw up on his carpet that night. And then I think months later, he moved to a new apartment, had his housewarming, and again, new apartment. So it was a double whammy for him. Not necessarily a weird place to throw up, but definitely like a
Difficult to clean.
Yeah, difficult to clean, and unfortunate that he got hit twice with it.
I love that double.
I remember at my 18th, someone threw up in my parents' like herb garden, and I had to I said to my dad, I was like, I don't think any of these are usable. He's like, why? Why not? And I'm like, oh.
The nutrients were already taken out in the digestive.
Oh my God.
It's not compost, Dad. Sorry.
Oh gosh, is this the level of? Are we going this low brow right off the bat?
Look,
with
I
it?
want to get into the nitty gritty of
And this
synthesizers,
is yeah. But this you do have to cover the.
I love
these
hearing
these are important topics.
I want to hear about your manager's carpet stains. No worries.
Oh yeah,
It's-
totally.
It's all part of it.
Get him on here. He'll chat about it.
Well, speaking of, that's
Yeah.
a great segue because I do know Craig, and he's a fantastic person, especially here in the Sydney music industry. Shout out to Craig. I know you all have been working in various manners for many
Yeah,
years.
totally. Yeah.
Describe that relationship, and especially how that's changed now that you're no longer releasing on labels.
So Craig and I met maybe 7 years ago. He was living in Redfern, and I remember I was with my friend Andrew at the time, and we picked him up, and he had a studio in the city called Rec Studios, which was the original space of 301 in Australia. So it's 301 Castlereagh Street.
Fantastic.
And it was meeting him was my first foray into what was like the real deal, like Sydney / Australian music scene.
Fantastic.
So going into this space on the 7th floor of 301 Castlereagh, and like it opens up and it is like classic looking studio, like red carpet, gold records, platinum records everywhere, because it's housed everyone in Australia. And working in a proper studio for the first time to mix some of my original music. It was phenomenal. So he kind of opened up my eyes to what that world looked like in Australia. And over a couple of years, we'd worked on music together in sort of a number of different forms for my staff, for bands, production staff, engineering staff. And he just was so clued in to what sort of the Australian music industry is and was and is going to be, that we ended up sort of just working together in a more official capacity, which is great. And that's been like, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And from that time, you those early days, you were releasing on labels like Sweat It Out and other ones. How important is that management assistance now that you're going a bit more independent?
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm releasing music through Mandatory, which is awesome. It's like through a distribution with Believe, and when you're working in a smaller team, everyone has a bit more responsibility. I think with the labels, there's so many people, and you can kind of focus not just on making the music. You still have to be on top of it if you want things to go well, but it is more your responsibility and everyone who is involved. If it's a smaller team, everyone has to take on a big chunk of work to make sure that things are doing the best they possibly can, I suppose. And it just means being more hands-on, which I kind of like. I know some people wouldn't, but for stuff like making content, I kind of enjoy the process of sitting down, working out something that's going to work as, like a social post for a new song. And it is... I can understand why people don't want to do that, and that's a big conversation now as well with people. It's like, I just want to make music. I don't want to have to do all this stuff. But it's like, well, you kind of have to. That's because everyone else is doing it, and that's just the reality of what it is now.
And it is a creative outlet.
Yeah,
for you
totally.
As well.
I think that's probably a big factor in it. Make it something that you can enjoy doing. Like, it doesn't have to be an absolute punish. That was the whole Preset Perfect thing. I was like, well, I love synthesizers and it's a cool piece of content. Why don't I just make the two?
Combine this.
Yeah, combine them and
help me keep track of the presets themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't always have to be a punish, I guess. And doing that smaller team stuff, you're more hands-on. You have to think about it a bit more and plan a bit more. But ultimately, when something goes well, you get to reap the benefits, and not that it's about patting yourself on the back, but you can say, well, we really gave it our all. And if it doesn't work, you can assess everything and say, well, what did we do? What can we do better? And as long as you're driven, you can make that work in the future. Yeah.
So is Mandatory a label?
They are. It's like label services.
Label services.
Yeah. And I would say that they're a label. Yeah. But it's not a major label. It's not a...
Yeah, they're an independent organization. Yeah. Is that line... Now that there are distributors that almost anyone can tap into and upload their tracks through for a fee and send out those kinds of... They also generally have artist services available, plus there's traditional labels that several of them are branching out and saying, hey, we can do artist services separate to being literally like signed on the
roster.
Line.
Yeah.
Is that all... Have you seen a lot of changes and shifts in that business model side, and how have you navigated that as you've tried to keep up? And and I might bring it back to your album release. Was that through was that helped by Mandatory as well?
No,
or
so that was
before
that was also through a label services thing through AWOL. And yeah, again, so I think that the veil, like it has been, like everything with music has become a lot more accessible. It used to be that you would have to go to a studio to make your song, and you would have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for studio time, writers, session musicians. And now you've got people like Flume who are making Grammy award-winning records on a laptop with cracked plugins, which is awesome. It's like, it's crazy. So every aspect of music has been a bit more, not democratized, but it's a lot more accessible. And of course that flows into the rest of the process, I think. It's not just the music making, it is also how the music goes up onto the internet. And you see that happen where people can just upload something to SoundCloud and it just blows up and it changes people's lives because, you know, Disclosure found the song and started playing it in their sets or something like that.
Little repost here
Exactly,
and there,
yeah, totally. So having the flexibility to do something like a label services deal means that people, anyone, the most talented people in the world can now get their music out there and not really have to worry about the politics of or getting into the big sort of heavy side of the music industry, which obviously is still a behemoth because all the big artists in the world are still signed to, you know, massive labels.
There's still power in that.
Yeah, totally, of course, yeah.
The advice that you would give to someone, you know, thinking about a little Mickey Kojak, little 16-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, when before I get to advice to someone else, you know,
Yeah.
trying to start out at that age in this new world of music and the different revenue models and different structures behind the scenes and different softwares that you can have, what was it like for you starting? Were you starting as a teenager?
Yeah, I've played piano forever. Like from when I was 6, I started playing piano and have always played piano. Picked up guitar when I was a teenager, started getting into music production stuff when I was maybe 15 or 16.
Okay.
Very, very bad, but just like that, you have to be. Like you
Yeah.
have to start out awful at these things.
Creative process requires it, demands it.
Exactly. And you have the hunger for it as well, like then, because it's so new and exciting. And I pretty immediately went straight into like clubbing scene and culture. When I hit 18, I was like, how do I get into all this stuff? I had a brother that worked and listened to a lot of dance music. And, you know, he used to work at Fuzzy whenever they had festivals on. He would work with them and he'd always come home with a, you know, Park Life '08 compilation CD. Here it is, like, get amongst it. So I was pretty ready to dive straight into getting out there and doing gigs and stuff like that. And that was 18 to 20, doing it in various guises and just trying to figure out what worked, I suppose. Yeah. So that was the initial foray into it. I met a lot of people doing that. I didn't go to uni for more than like a year, but the people that I met in that very short amount of time that I was there also helped open a lot of doors, luckily.
At uni?
At uni, yeah. So like I met a guy called Nick who introduced me to the guys at Stony Roads. I played a party of theirs, and then my original managers, Garth and Leon, were there, who, you know, took me under their wing. And my first gig as Mickey Kojak was with Alice in Wonderland.
When did you start uni?
So I started straight out of high school, and so I was 18, and I signed up for a course at UTS called Sound and Music Design, and I was there for 6 weeks, and it was just like, not for me. I met some great people there that I still chat to and know, but after 6 weeks, I was like, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna stay home and like work on music in my own time, because it felt like a better use of my time.
Why is that? What was
because I was driven enough to sit there and I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't getting that out of uni. Like, it was probably a great course for some people, but I was at a point of having played piano for 13 years at that point. Like, I knew a lot about music.
And that was the stuff that they were teaching you
as
well?
In a very basic sort of format, and also really sort of a lot of scientific stuff as well, which wasn't what I was interested in, I suppose. I don't even know what I'm trying to describe with scientific stuff there as well. Because again,
Academia.
I said maybe it was just that, but it just didn't sort of gel with what I was after from the course, I suppose. And yeah, left, focused that year on making music at home. And yeah, that year was great. That was like the first time I had a song played on Triple J, signed to Sweat It Out, and was playing Splendour for the first time, grooving for the first time that following year. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Like I'm happy with my choice to drop out after 6 weeks. And
sorry,
then I did,
Mom.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and then I went to COFA UNSW
In Paddington.
in Paddington when it was COFA. Went there for a year and it was just too hectic. Like because I was touring every weekend and I just wasn't doing assignments and and that was a really good course as well, but I just wasn't doing the work.
And which course was that?
It was called what was it called? Not art history, like maybe media arts or something like that. I think.
You'd already had a project that was bubbling.
Yeah.
But you didn't go back to study music. It was more
arts in general.
adjacent.
Yeah. But you could sort of hone in on what you wanted to do. So the first year was very broad and general, which is really interesting because I hadn't been as exposed to, say, visual mediums and traditional art, I suppose. So learning art history was really cool, I suppose.
Well, it's a good foundation for just
Totally.
art
Well,
generally.
having the historical context of that stuff. I knew it from a music point of view because you grow up, you play classical music and Baroque music and romantic stuff, and then seeing that trajectory, but from the visual medium, and then how it translates into modern art in the same way that I had seen it translate from classical music to modern music, was a really interesting and eye-opening experience. Yeah.
And an active comparison.
Yeah, totally.
To really highlight, this is the historical context of what I do.
Totally. Yeah,
well.
for sure. Definitely.
I feel like sometimes that can get lost, especially in Australia. Like we don't have, at least, since brutal colonization, there's not a long history. And even, I have Irish background and a lot of that history got cut off through colonization of Ireland and families moving here.
Sure.
And it's like we don't have that longer, unless you go to study art history.
Yeah.
It's not something culturally front of mind or even back of mind.
Totally.
The context we live in for all of, whether it's music or otherwise.
For sure. A lot of Australian music culture is probably happening now. Like it's sort of flourishing
Well, at
for
least
the
in
first
the
time.
electronic
Yeah,
side.
yeah, and bands as well. You have like Amel and the Sniffers. I mean, Rufus are a big band, but they're also electronic. But it's
But bands have been like an Australian thing.
That's true. That is true.
The big rock bands.
That is, of course,
have been Australian.
You're talking about the Wiggles, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And all of their iterations.
Yeah. Exactly.
All of their many forms. Shout out the Wiggles. Cheers. Thanks for all your inspiration. Pushing the culture forward.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they won the Hottest 100. They cross generations. Everyone loves them.
Would you call them your competition?
Oh, yeah,
in the
definitely.
Triple J charts?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So you had early success with Triple J.
Yeah.
Speaking of, now that we're in 2024, now that you're older, now that streaming is a whole new
It's a difference. It's a whole new thing.
Radio has a whole new element online as well.
Yeah.
Radio is being filmed now.
Yeah.
So that you can
I mean, a lot of what I consume from Triple J is, interview content. I always see Lucy Smith, shout out Lucy Smith, with her great interviews.
Cheers, Lucy.
That's my main form of like music media consumption now as well.
So this.
Yeah, totally.
How has that changed your strategy? I'm sure it's changed something in your marketing strategy
totally,
around
for
how
sure.
music gets heard.
Yeah.
Has that also been an element in approaching how you make the music? Or package it?
Not really. I don't think so. Oh, actually, maybe a little bit. I don't know. I think there's a big thing with electronic music that people are ready to consume like singles. Like they just kind of expect a song. They're not really looking for a 12-song album a lot of the time. There are obviously exceptions to that rule. Everyone gets very excited when there's a Rufus album or, whoever. but
back-to-back bangers.
Yeah, exactly, totally. And a lot of the time now, though, you get that encouragement to just be like, let's focus on putting out, one song at a time. Let's see how it goes, and we can navigate each song as we figure out what works, which is fine, but it is also really nice to be like locked into the structure of an album. And it's a fun creative pursuit as well. But in terms of the actual songs and the songwriting, I don't think it really makes a difference. There's always the time constraint element to it, but that isn't necessarily a change between radio and streaming. You still kind of want to make a tight little package of a song if you're making, say, pop music or house music, which we both know there are all these long edits of these songs. They're 6.5 minutes, but there's always that 2-minute version that is going on the radio or that is on Spotify or Apple or wherever.
So I guess we've always had the radio edit, the original mix, the extended mix.
Totally.
You would have a release that's catering for radio and pop. You'd have one that's catering for the DJs that need to, use the minute at the end and the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. But it's such a weird historical thing as well, because it used to be, it was always related to technology why those songs were the length that they were. So, if you're making a record, like an actual physical LP, you had, I think it was like 35 minutes. So like 16 to 18 minutes per side. That was your album. And then CDs came out and you had bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers being like, we're going to make 90 minutes of music on an album. And that was what the constraint was. All of a sudden, you could make like a continuous thing. Before you had to flip the vinyl, and now, so there's always like the technology always helps to like dictate the medium of the song, I suppose, and the format.
Absolutely.
But now you can do whatever you want.
You can put out something that's a minute and 1 second.
Well, how cool. I saw the Dominic Fike album called 14 Minutes, and it's a 14-minute album, and all the songs are like 2 minutes long or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, you don't have to do that, but it's also, it's almost like antithetical to like, you have all the time in the world to say what you want to say, and it's like, no, let's do this really short thing and get it done, which I think is sick.
I mean, that brings me to think of creative parameters or creative restraints that are often quite useful to say, all right, well, this is the space we can work within. Let's see what we can do within this. And, do you ever use creative restraints in that sense, or say, hey, I'm sitting down in the studio and this, and I have to make something with X, Y, Z elements, or do you have any restraints like that?
All the time. It's so
how do you do that?
I think the biggest one that has been guiding my music for the last 3 or 4 years is a track limit constraint on songs.
And by track, just for
non-producers. So when you're making music, each element of a song is a track in the project file that you're using. So if you've got a kick drum, that is one track. If you've got a snare, that's track number 2. Hi-hats, number 3. 4 is your bass. 5 is whatever.
And you might have tracks that are a bass, but 3 tracks with different layers.
Yep, exactly. So with technology being the way that it is now, you can make songs that have 400 different elements in there, and you can just go on forever and ever adding and adding and adding. And I've mixed songs for people before where there are hundreds of tracks where you have to do that stuff, and that's fine. But it seems like the more you add, like you're eventually taking away from like the song that is meant to be there. So the biggest creative restriction I put on myself is, and it also just helps for work formatting, is limiting myself to say 16 tracks of instruments and then 8 to 16 tracks of vocals, depending on what I have to work with. That I'm a bit more flexible with the vocal stuff, just because I'm not sure if you're working with a singer. They might want to do something with big harmonies, you have to do it. But with the instruments, I'm pretty comfortable, say from songs from like 2018, 2019, all of my songs would have 16 tracks, including drum breakdowns, bass, synths, effects, everything like that. And it means that you can mix a song so much cleaner, so much quicker, and the parts that you put in the song have to be good. You can't just throw shit at the wall and be like, oh, well, that doesn't sound good. Let me throw something else on there. And then make it better. It's like, no, there's one guitar part here and it has to be shit hot. It has to be really, really good.
You can't be compensating or covering up other...
Exactly. And that means that you have to be like technically proficient with your instruments, with the software, with everything. And it pushes you to do better from a creative point of view, from a performance point of view. And I think it yields a better result.
Well, on performance, I imagine if you've got too many tracks going and then you're trying to translate that to a live show.
Yep.
So, for example, Splendour in the Mud.
Yeah, awesome.
/ Splendour in the Grass, 2022. You had DJ'd Splendour years prior, before the pandemic. And now, 2022, you had just put out your album.
Yeah.
Trying to translate those songs to a live show.
Yeah.
And was that one of the bigger stages you'd had
for sure.
as well?
Definitely, yeah.
How did you go about that process?
We had been playing together as a band, like the Mickey Kojak show as a band with a 4 to 5 piece crew for maybe 3 years. So we knew what was going on. And again, huge creative restriction for that stuff and for the album was whatever is being made here has to be able to be played on stage with a very minimal amount of tracks coming through on a playback system. If there's guitar, you want the guitar person to be able to play it. If there's drums, you don't want crazy drums that are unplayable and impossible. It has to be something that can be translated live. So going onto those stages, it was not as big of a challenge to translate it because it had been thought about before, I suppose. And the journey to get there, it was pretty simple. The songs are written, here are the parts. You work with shit hot musicians. All my friends are great musicians, great drummers, great bass players, great guitarists. And they come in, they play the parts, you rehearse that first day. Day 2 comes along. Hey, I've got this idea. Wow, that sounds awesome. Go ahead and do that. Like, you have to trust those people to bring that show to life, I suppose.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to also touch on somebody else that was on stage for...
Yep.
Actually, there's a few things I want to touch on for Splendour in the Mud because it was such a wild year for Splendour, but also for you performing there. I would love to hear about how you managed to finally get to stage and campground and all that.
We had such a crazy experience. We were very much the first artists into the Splendour camp on the Thursday before the festival. And we were, I know for a fact, the last people out because the van that we drove in was bogged.
No.
And we had been such nuisances to the people working the artists back of stage just because we were around the whole time. And at first it was endearing and then they started to hate us, I think. That by the end of the festival when we were like, we're bogged, they were like, well, you can sort it out yourselves. And we're like, oh, okay.
I thought that was banter.
I thought we were having fun. It was, getting in everything that day, that first day, that Thursday when we were arriving, everything had changed because there was so much rain, there was so much mud, people were sleeping in their cars. We were lucky enough to get on site, but they'd moved where the campsites were all located. We eventually got to our tents, had everything set up, and it was just, you're waiting for the tents to collapse from rain. It was awful. It was awful. I woke up the next day, probably after like 1 or 2 hours sleep, very hungover because you're just sort of medicating with alcohol. And I just shattered. I was like, oh, I hate this. What are we doing here? And then
this was before you've played.
This was on the Friday. This was day 1 now. We were playing on the Sunday. And I know this is gonna sound awful, but when we woke up and we're out there and we're sort of sussing it out, and it's the whole festival site is absolutely trashed with people and rain, and it's insane. And there were rumors starting to go around that they were going to cancel the festival, and everyone's like, what are they going to do? Where everyone's here now, what are they going to do? And they cancelled it. And for some reason, I remember this relief that it was like, everything is fucked up. It's not just me. I'm not just making this up in my head. This is crazy. So luckily by Saturday they had everything sorted out, and we got up on Sunday and played the show, and it was incredible. It was really, really great. So I mean, they pulled it together. It would have been such a hard slog for them from a logistics point of view
I can't imagine.
to do it. And, you know, kudos to them. It did all work in the end. I was cut. I didn't get to see Gorillaz.
On that Friday
On the
night.
Friday. We heard them sound checking. Again, we were the first artists there. And we were like side of stage for Gorillaz doing their sound check. And then it was like, oh, we didn't get to see the show.
Oh, and then you just cop that level of rain that makes the whole thing impossible.
Totally. Yeah.
At least you got to hear the sound check.
Oh, it sounded awesome from side of stage.
Well, I'm glad you made it. On the stage, and another element that you had on stage as well. Were can you tell me about the dancing? What was dancing?
So we had there's a song called All That Acid, which was a good one for me. Did well. And it was the last song in the set, and to do something fun for it, I decided to get a bunch of my friends to dress up as acid tabs, come out on stage for the last song and dance around. Two-pronged. Obviously, it was a great way to, highlight the song and have a bit of fun. It also got 4 of my friends in to the festival for free. That was. I was like, what can I do to get a bunch of people in here?
It's like, I need official backup dancers.
That was it. You can't argue with it. It's part of the stage show.
Absolutely.
You know? So
you want me to perform Splendour? This is
part of the deal.
I need these dancers.
This is it. And they did great. It was fantastic. And they're still hanging in my parents' garage, proudly. A little smiley tab acid and a little heart-shaped acid tab. Very fun.
That's I love that it's hanging in your parents' garage.
Yeah, very Catholic family. They love it. It's up there.
Well, I did ask before the show, to what extent I love discussing drugs generally and their ins and outs, and there were a couple of songs that had particular inspirations, and when I asked about whether to what extent we were going to dive into that, one of the first stories you told me or touched on was that your dad helped.
Yeah, we made
these
them together.
acid tabs.
It was such a great bonding experience. We were in the backyard. It was a nice sunny day, and I think it was like a TV box, like a big 65-inch TV box that we cut out, and he was like, "Is this big enough?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think that should be okay."
Is he crafty?
Yeah, he's a crafty gentleman.
He knows you pitched this to him, saying,
"Hey, this is what we're doing."
Yeah. What was the pitch?
I said, we're going to make big smiley face sheets because it's such a happy occasion, and we're going to go out there, and the other one's going to be a love heart, and it's going to be fantastic. And that was the end of the discussion. He was like, "Sounds great. Sounds fantastic. Let's do that." And we spent the day doing it, and it was a nice, wholesome family day.
I love that.
And that was the end of it. It wasn't, these things here are giant tabs of acid,
yes,
Father. Do you know what that is? And you'd be like, no. He probably wouldn't have cared, to be honest.
Well, now that they hang up in their shed, are we exposing what he thought was?
I suppose so. It's here now. That's what it is. There were family discussions about it. I remember because my mum asked me, "What is that song about?" And then my sister, who works in science education, and I was there. We were just like family sort of lunch. I was like, there's all sorts of acid. There's lactic acid. There's sulfuric acid, and then we just started rattling off all these names, and that was enough. That quashed any cause of drama, any family drama.
So we're not causing any drama today.
No, we never cause any family drama. No, of course not.
This isn't causing...
but it's such a big part of dance music culture. We were talking about this before as well. Like it's almost inherent that, a lot of dance music is revolved around drug taking, partying, plur, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It is what it is. Every scene has its affiliation with it.
The electronic music scene, for sure. I know that's been a big reason why a lot of our club scene and the festival scene has been hurt over the past decade.
Totally.
Because of policies against that, and also some tragic incidents around all that. Is that something that you... I mean, the songs are just having fun. And reflecting, reflecting what you see in the clubs.
And everything, just experiences that you have and stuff like that. It is all very reflective, I think, as well. It is, it's all fun and all of it. I don't know. It's just, I didn't ever really think too much about it. Whenever you're writing lyrics, and I'm very, very lazy when it comes to lyrics, it has to be, because I just don't feel very confident doing it. It has to be something that is easy for me to sort of write about and extrapolate on, I suppose, that doesn't need a lot of iterations from me. It is very much the last thing I think about, unfortunately, most of the time, which is, moving into a lot of the newer stuff. I'm working with singers again, which I haven't done, and just seeing how people write when it's their like thing that they do is incredible. So, it's, you write about what you know.
So amongst all of the elements that you have to put in as someone who produces themselves, would you think of yourself as a writer?
Yeah, it all is writing, just not lyrics as the main shebang, I suppose. And it has been a good experience learning how to do that. Even songs that I haven't sung on, there's always writing contributions that you make. You're sitting in the room, I think this would be good, or sing it this way. What if you try this word? You have to be sort of attuned to that stuff, because you're in that seat of listening, and you have to be critical also while experiencing it for the first time and trying to enjoy it, I suppose. Yeah.
With the production and thinking about vocals, was it weird to first try that?
Yeah, I hated it. It sucked. And it was out of necessity. There was one song called Move Too Fast, which I had written all the lyrics for and sung a demo of, and was sending it to people being like, can you send this back to me? Give it a go, or let's sit in the studio, try and work it out. And it just never came out how I wanted it to come out, which was unfortunate at the time. And then it was a discussion with the label, which was sweated out. And it was, well, what if I try, sing it as best as I can, recorded it, came out okay. There are still moments if I listen to it, which I don't, but if it's
Someone
on or
does.
someone brings it up, I always think about certain vocal delivery things where I'm like, oh, that sounds awful, or the lyrics are so juvenile. But it was 9 years ago or something like that. So it's there are parts of it that I love, but that very first foray into it was nerve-wracking and educational.
I mean, the first foray into anything. I mean, this is
Yeah.
my first podcast
And how are we doing?
recording for this. I'm loving it.
Yeah,
Loving it.
I'm having a great time.
But it is that confronting.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm sure I'll listen back, shout out to me listening in hopefully 100 episodes time.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so cringe.
Yeah, what did we do? Why did
Why
we do
are you
that?
speaking like that? Thinking back to those early days, and maybe even before those first vocal attempts, thinking back to as a teenager, trying to figure out which path you're going down, academics versus music. Is there any advice that you would give to yourself back then, now that you've got all this extra life experience and you've actually hustled this career and got to this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was very stubborn, as everyone is, when I always thought that I knew what was best for songs or for career choices, and it would have been better to listen more, I think, which is something that we all probably need to do. Listen to other people that know more than us. Be a little less pig-headed about things. But that is just kind of, maybe that is who I was, or I'm not sure. But I was very stubborn on certain things, and now I'm a lot more loose. And if people, if you're employing a graphic designer to do artwork, and you're I don't like that orange or that blue, blah, blah, blah. It's well, why'd you decide to work with this person? Don't you trust that they're going to pick the best thing? So it's a lot of that. If you're working with someone who is a session musician, and they decide to do a certain thing, sure, it's your song. You have a right to say something, but if you don't like what they're putting down, then maybe you should look somewhere else, or figure out what you actually want and be able to articulate that to someone so that they can deliver it better.
How has it, now that you're better at listening,
Oh yeah, I love listening. It's great.
who these days, or maybe throughout the career, have been people, whether mentors or otherwise, that you have shut up and listened?
Everyone. A big one is for graphic design stuff. Definitely Dave Porte Beckefeld. He's always helped with my graphic design stuff and just any general like aesthetic things. He is so good at what he does, and it was never too bad with him because he is always right, I think, and he would find a way to convince me that he was right. But now I'm just like, well, yeah, of course you're right. You know exactly what you want, and you have your best interests and my best interests for this at heart. Craig for mix stuff as well. My manager, even though I mix my own music and produce my own music, we always finish the songs together because it's important to have another set of ears. Again, perfect example of, well, why am I doing this with you if I'm not going to listen? If you think it should be this way, I've listened to this song 100 times, you're hearing it for the first time, you're going to notice these things. I should be less combative about that and just...
Remember why I wanted you in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are the two big ones.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. The management side, having someone like that sounds like almost what a producer would be doing.
Producing my life.
But from what...
Help. Someone.
Is this a distress call?
No.
We love you, Craig. But that was something that was how you kind of described your relationship early days as well.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
It was collaborative even on the music side.
Yeah, totally.
And it's really great to hear. And it's interesting to hear you mention a graphic designer. What was his name again? Sorry?
Dave Porte Beckefeld. Yeah.
Shout out, Dave.
Yeah.
I have noticed that your online persona is very cheeky, but you do also have some graphic plays. There's some of the, you're cutting out your face for a meme or something.
Oh yeah, Dave's not doing that. I'm doing
that's
that.
That's what I thought. I was like, he's doing the more.
He's doing the highbrow stuff. I'm doing all the lowbrow stuff. Yeah. Anything that looks like it was made in like word art or in paint, that's me. Proudly me.
Fantastic. The coming back, we touched on it earlier. Content creation, because I used to do similar stuff when I was doing music journalism and just doing silly cutouts that were obviously photoshopped by someone who didn't really know how to use photo. That's the fun part of it.
That is the fun part of it. Anyone can jump in and do it. It's great.
Part of the art of it is the rough elements.
Yeah.
Now that video is kind of taken over so much, you've obviously been trying to figure out ways to express yourself and be part of that online ecosystem. It's obviously essential for profiling yourself as an artist. How has your approach, because you touched on a series that you started around the preset packs.
Yeah.
Has it always been easy for you? I know you said you didn't necessarily want to in the beginning. Was it difficult for you to come up to a camera, especially like, face to, or has it always been pretty natural?
No, I think it's pretty natural. I like talking, and it's easy enough to just kind of sit in front of a camera. I don't mind feeling like an idiot a lot of the time, especially when you're recording stuff like that. You're in the privacy of your own home. When it gets into public, I feel like it's probably, I don't think I could do something like that 10 takes out on the street, which you see people doing that shamelessly, and power to them, I suppose, but it's fucking crazy. It's just, it's nuts. I don't really have a problem sitting there and working it out. And it's easy enough to talk and figure out what I want to say on the spot. Don't really have a problem improvising if I have to. Music teaches you that a lot as well, I suppose.
True.
Especially when you're doing jazz stuff, you just kind of have to think on your feet and problem solve and work things out. And the biggest thing is just coming up with the concepts, I think, because there are so many trends that you can follow, but you also have to do something that is interesting to you. Otherwise you won't do it. There's no like incentive to sit down and just make content that you don't want to make. It has to be something that's going to be fulfilling. So,
and that's all kind of in a scripting period.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, all the formats are down to a pretty fine art. It's, hey, this is Mickey Kojak. Welcome to Preset Perfect. Today I'm playing XYZ by XYZ. Hope you enjoy it. And even the song structures for what they are, it's the same every time. So again, creative boundaries, it's, you have to do this and then you have to do that, and it has to be done in 50 seconds. So it's a challenge to work out initially, but then once you've got it, you stick at it and just sort of stay doing what you're doing.
Get that template.
Only if it's working though is the thing. Like if it's not working, then you have to workshop different stuff. A big one for that was I had too long of an intro initially, and there was a literal constraint on TikTok where it was like, you can't post videos that are over a minute if they have music in them. So I was like, okay, well, this all needs to be shorter then. I can't talk for 20 seconds about something and then do the thing. Also, who's going to watch 20 seconds of some random person
on the voice box?
On the talking to you that like you don't know them. Whereas if you just immediately start playing and it's a voiceover, you're hooked in for that format because it's, oh, here is music. It sounds good. What am I listening to? Oh, it's a new sound that I could use. And if you're lucky enough, like I have been with a few of those videos, it gets to the right people. And you know, you get all the shares and people follow you because they're like, well, this is a really interesting thing and I'm here for it and I want to see more of it. So
I guess it's entertaining for the layman, but also interesting.
Yes, informative.
Producers are, oh, okay, that's a...
Totally, yeah.
What advice would you give people who are in the arts or any, small business owners who are struggling with that content creation side?
I think you have to be open to doing something that you are initially uncomfortable with, which is how any sort of growth.
Endeavor.
How it all starts. You know, it's all scary when you sort of start it. Don't create too many barriers to like entry for it as well. Initially doing all the content stuff, I was like, oh, I need to get a green screen and I need to get the right lighting and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, no, I have an iPhone 15, which has a awesome camera for filming content that is being viewed on a phone. Why would I overcomplicate this? And you can, I've just made it as simple as possible for myself. And if you're trying to get into that stuff, making it as simple as possible for yourself is probably the way that you'll get the most amount of work done, I would say.
Fantastic.
That's what's worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you, but
we'll find out.
Let me know.
I wanted to do a genre switch and quickly ask about your foray into Australian hip hop.
Oh yeah. Let's
just
go.
A quick spiel on the period that you were working with Chillinit.
Yeah. So I worked with Chillinit for. We still hang out every now and again and do some sessions. But it was around 2018. I had a studio in Surrey Hills, and a friend of mine said that a friend of his needed a studio and someone to record Chillinit. I wasn't really across, and I'm still not really across a lot of Australian hip hop offerings. We did a session at my studio. We both gelled very quickly. He is Lebanese, I'm Lebanese. We kind of hit it off just on the basis of that and just like chill, cool demeanor. And it was a studio where he could do whatever he wanted. It wasn't like a fussy studio. He wanted to smoke some weed.
A bit
he
buck
could
wild.
smoke. Yeah, he could. Yeah, exactly. So he always had a good time there. We recorded a few sessions. This was definitely in 2019, and it was a lot of his social content stuff. It was like YouTube videos where he was doing freestyles and lower stakes stuff, I would say. And it was after the first album had come out, which was going gangbusters. I think it's in like its 200th week in the ARIA hip hop charts, which is insane. And after that, COVID happened, and I sort of closed up the studio for the most part.
And were you running that studio?
It was Craig, myself, and then a few other friends doing a like multi-use space. There were two big studios, some desks, and a like photo studio area, communal office area situation. And that was very much on the fritz for 2020 and 2021. But
on the fritz,
on the fritz, as everything was. During that time, Chillinit wanted to record an album, and we decided to use a studio in Cornell, which is in the Shire, like deep Shire sort of thing, across the water from Botany Bay. And during that time, we recorded his second album, The Octagon, which just went gold, which is crazy.
Congrats.
I know, thanks. figure out how to get my hands on a gold record now. But yeah, it was such a whirlwind. It's not something that I was like looking to do, but had fallen into and was very open to trying something completely different, I suppose. During that process, a lot of the work was vocal engineering, mix stuff, like mix and production work, and then a little bit of actual songwriting stuff. So it was covering all bases for that project, and it's awesome. Like, it's such a cool thing to be a part of. He's big on a different level. Like, the fans that he has are crazy, and the shows that he plays are crazy, and everything like that. And just playing that small part in it, and seeing that scene, like a completely different scene to electronic music in Australia, was and is really fun and cool.
Absolutely. For the listeners and viewers at home, I want a quick definition from you as a producer on what a mix or a mix down is. So when we're referring to what mixing is,
sure.
And what is that for people at home? And also, is that what is that compared to a remix?
Good question.
We're going layman.
Yeah, good question. So a mix, when you have recorded every part of a song that needs to happen, a mix engineer will take all those parts and change the volume of each one and do certain things like getting rid of the bass or getting rid of the treble. EQing. I'd said it in a more layman's way. But
bookmarking the terminology as well.
It's taking all those sounds and making sense of them so that it is listenable and sounds as best as it can. You don't want the drums to be too loud, but you don't want the bass to be too quiet. So you figure out a way for them both to work. But then, hey, all of a sudden there's guitars, and hey, all of a sudden there's vocals, and then all of those elements have to work together to create a song. So that is mixing a song. When you make a mix down of a song, that is that. A remix of a song is taking those parts of an already finished song and saying, hey, I'm going to do something completely different with it. A lot of electronic artists will take this fully formed song and grab the vocal and just produce around that. That's one way of doing it. Or they might hear, that bass line is really, really cool. Let me keep the bass, and I'll change the drums, and I'll change the chords, and I'll keep the vocal, but I'm going to chop it up this way. It's a very different thing, the two of them.
Do you have any preferences on, like, what's your favorite thing to do in the studio?
I love remixing songs. I think some of my favorite recent things that I've done, my remix for Art vs. Science was so much fun to make. Again,
as in the Leica version?
No. I did the Leica version, and from the Leica version, we had built a relationship there, and they put out a song called Sweat. I messaged them and said, I think I could do it. Fucking awesome remix of this. Let's go. And that was the most fun I think I've had making a song in the last 3 or 4 years, because it was such a challenge. It's a lot of bass playing, and I'm not much of a bass player, but I had to get really, really good for this very specific thing that I had in mind, which was like a real funky disco popping type of bass. And yeah, I'd say remixing is always great because you get to play around with something that has already been made. The creative, it's another creative constraint, because here are the pieces of the puzzle, and now rearrange it into another photo, essentially.
You have to be inspired off this piece.
Totally.
With the, you're referring to a recording and playing bass. A big thing in electronic music production especially is sampling. I saw, you've got a new single coming out in 2 days, and I saw a byline for it, something about samples, sax solos in the voice box. So how much are you using sampling in your production generally versus live?
Yeah, never really that much. It's not, there are people who can do it really well, and I'm not one of them. I'm a very, here is a cool thing, let me just take that and do it. And you see those videos on Tracklib of like Daft Punk sample breakdown videos. And
it's like every track is a sample phenomenal. That they've walked.
Every second is a sample. It's like, it's just, it's phenomenal. And that is a different level. It's a different way of thinking, and it's not something that I've ever really gotten into. But for this song, it was very much just like, it's a pretty straight up use of a sample. And it is fun the way that this song worked as well, because it's like a disco-y sounding sample. I wanted to sort of fill the rest of the song with elements that could have existed in the 80s, like a talk box, like a sax solo, but then also bring it in with, jack and house drums just to make sure that it, sounds good in the club.
Absolutely.
You know?
And what's the single called?
It's called, oh God, what's it called? Oh, no, I'm kidding. It's called Your Body. It's called Your Body. Yeah.
It'll definitely be out by the time we
I'd
release
say
this.
so.
But go stream.
Yeah, do it.
The body. What was it?
Your Body.
Your body.
Your Body.
Sorry, this is how much research I've been keeping. I went through the back catalogue. Nothing
Well,
about 2 days time.
It's not out yet, so you don't have to know about it. You don't have to know about it.
Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
there's a couple things I still want to touch base on. I did mention in the intro the rhetorical question: is he a gamer? And you actually made a song about video games.
Yeah.
I actually, speaking of some research on your back
Oh, yeah.
catalog, one of the lyrics from video games is, "They see a shell of a man that I used to be,
Yeah.
locked in a back room like a rat in a cage," and something about sedating the pain.
Yeah.
So you are a gamer,
Yeah.
but those lines sound
Yeah.
like you might have been too much of a gamer at one
Well,
point.
no, again,
What's going on there?
Again, this is all.
Or is this the random lyricism?
No, it's not that. It's all part of stretching the truth a bit. Like comedians, I think it's called. I forget what it's called. Not punching up or something like that. But you beef up a story and you stretch out a story to, make it good, I suppose. So I was never that into it, but it's that stereotypical thing of like a gamer being locked in their room and just like, sunlight hurts them. And, it was just a funny thing to think. I play a lot of video games and I took a hiatus, and I remember buying a PlayStation 4 Pro after not playing video games for about 4 or 5 years and being like shook with how in-depth and crazy these games had become. Like you could spend 200 hours playing a game and you wouldn't be finished. Like it was enormous.
They're all just side quests. You haven't even
Totally,
started.
exactly, and that was the sort of initial inspiration of, well, what if you got that into video games that you just didn't have a life, and it was that was the origin of that. Yeah.
So that wasn't you. That was a
No,
character.
no. I didn't have any saws that I was picking or anything like that in a dark room or anything.
So there is an element of character when you're
Yeah, for
doing
sure.
lyrics
It's all stretched. Like it's all that's part of the fun though, that you get to imagine those things. It's not interesting to just talk about the experience itself. It's kind of, well, what if this? It's like any creative outlet, I suppose.
How different is Mickey Kojak to Michael?
It's pretty similar. It's all just a stretch, I think. It's all within 10 to 20%, I would say.
Fair.
Yeah.
And if you're playing games now, what are you gaming?
A lot of solo games. I can't do the online thing. I'm scared of the kids. They're very
Scared of
good.
the kids?
They're crazy.
Man, the chat rooms be wild.
They are nuts. And I don't want to get they do some crazy stuff. They I think it's called fragging. Have you heard of this?
No.
So they're
Fragging.
So there are incidents in America of little video gamer kids getting upset at other little video gamer kids and then calling the police and saying, there's a terrorist in this house, because they search up the IP address, and people have died.
What, just because of the
Because
cops coming
the cops
in, people
come in and they're
defending?
like, and then it's game over. No pun
my
intended.
God.
It's
Fragging,
I believe.
fragging.
I believe that's
I'm
what
gonna
it's
check out
called.
Frag. Watch out for fragging.
Oh, you want to watch
Ladies
out
and
for
gentlemen.
that, yeah. But so it's a lot of solo stuff. I'm a console gamer. I'm not a PC gamer. Too in-depth, too scary. Money hole. You're going to buy a PC, you got to deck it out with the latest video card every year or something
I've
like
seen
that.
some friends who have built their own computers
Exactly.
for that very
Yeah,
reason. Yeah.
yeah.
But that's because they're into it. But
Yeah.
Are you in love?
Yeah, I'm in love. Yeah. You know who I'm in love with.
Indeed. We almost had
Babette.
I was like, should I say the woman you're in love with?
No, Babette was going to come on. She's great. She's in Korea. Not right now, but I'm sure as this happens, she's at the UN Global Plastics Treaty. sorting out the world's problems while I sit here chatting to you.
Indeed. Someone's got to do
Someone's
it.
got to do both of those things, you know? Yeah.
And I know she's done a lot of amazing work in that space and climate science. And I have read the executive summary of her PhD thesis.
Oh, yeah.
Regarding, you said you've read it a couple of years ago, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick spiel on?
So it's about the global plastic as a problem from a global perspective. Once it gets into the ocean, whose responsibility is it? The answer is we don't have a current contender for who should be taking care of it. So that's what her PhD was looking at. It was who are the main actors, what they're called, in the process of taking care of this issue. What is their role? How are they connected? And it was this global network map of players that are potentially involved in sorting this issue out. While all this was happening, while she was writing this PhD, the UN decided, hey, this would be a great time to get together and actually sort out this problem. So for the past 2.5 years, she's been going every 6 months to these treaty meetings where she is documenting, working with different coalitions that are there to see how what she has mapped out essentially is actually playing out in reality. So I won't spoil anything. She can tell you all about that.
Fantastic. I do look forward to it.
But I believe the verdict is the world is on fire or something like that. It's just all going to kind of crumble. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, to wrap up the episode on such a note of the world crumbling.
Yeah, let's go.
I wanted to ask, and this will be the last question, when you're writing music and putting music out there and the world is potentially crumbling, or there's always something wrong with something happening in the world.
Sure.
And is there a level that you stop yourself from putting that into because the music is mostly about fun and dancing.
Yeah.
You don't combine those generally, do you?
No, not really. I don't think it works for some people. I think that if I do it, I sound a bit preachy, and I think that is antithetical to like what I want to do with music, which is have fun, enjoy myself, help other people to enjoy themselves. It's a form of escapism, really. So I don't think it's something that I've ever really had a foray into or am particularly interested in doing. There are other ways to, be outspoken, and music for me isn't the way, I suppose, for the most part.
I know you've been vocal about certain things on social media, as but you don't intertwine it with the art form necessarily. So some of those things were gambling, gambling legislation around venues that we all work in and play in.
I'm trying to imagine a song that's anti-gambling. Like in my head, I'm like, that doesn't sound like a fun song
I want
to listen to. I don't want to be
song about the pokies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that could be good.
I mean, only
I think the
glorifying
chats
it.
did that.
Yeah,
they did.
That's glorifying it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hey, it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
That's another episode for another time. And of course, you've performed at Palestine fundraisers.
Yep.
And just to wrap up, how you and you've got Lebanese background.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? How's your family feeling?
It's all pretty crazy. When I chat to my parents, they're always optimistic about it. But I think from a perspective of like Lebanon's always in a bad situation overseas. So they're like, oh, it's like any other bad situation that's happened in Lebanon. But it's crazy to see the world in that sort of state. And especially when it is so close to home for like people that I know, my family, and the crazy thing with Lebanon as well, people talk about, it's in Beirut, but it's as small as Sydney. Like geographically, the footprint that Lebanon has is as small as like the city that we live in. It's just a different shape. But so it's like saying, if Cronulla is being bombed, of course you're going to be scared in Redfern.
Exactly.
That's terrifying. So yeah, it's obviously not, that's something that, again, it's not what I endeavor to write music about or anything like that, but it's obviously still something that, how can you not think about that, in your day-to-day life? And of course it impacts every aspect of what you do in some way, but it's not on the agenda as like a topic to write a dance music song about.
Hence the
Like David
escapism.
Guetta doing his. Haven't you seen this? I can't remember what it was, but it was
Like trying to bring peace to the world.
That's the one.
That
Yeah,
mic
yeah,
on the
yeah.
microphone.
Yeah.
That's not in Mickey Kojak's future.
No, not in the near future.
Well, what is in the near future as we wrap up now?
So the song that we were talking about, Your Body, which now we know what it's called.
Your Body.
Will be out. Bunch of shows throughout summer. Again, we don't know when this is coming out, you and I, but they could have happened. They might be happening.
When are the
soon.
shows? Give us some dates.
Around New Year's, the big one is Yours and Ours down in Wollongong. So
Fantastic.
that'll be a lot of fun. I think that'll be the one that is around this time of the video coming out.
Hopefully we'll be getting this out in the next few weeks.
Oh, there you go. Well, you come down to Wollongong, you have a good time.
I'm also booked and busy, so we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go.
Yeah.
But at this stage, I just want to thank you so much, Mickey,
Thanks
for
for having
coming
me.
on. We're getting I think the memory cards are about to run out, so we're gonna
That's it. It's a hard cut.
hard cut. But thank
No
you so
more
much.
prolific things to say.
No. Well, we got some
Maybe I can say something prolific and it can just cut off midway.
profound.
Profound, yeah.
Hit me.
No, I don't want to say anything.
Is there anything
I don't
bubbling
want to
up?
ruin the moment. There's nothing bubbling up.
The
There is nothing
soul
profound
isn't-
happening here.
This is don't come and expect anything deep.
Not on a day like today.
We got deep here.
We
and
got
there.
a little bit
We
deep.
touched
We got a little bit deep.
we got our little toes on the depths.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, before we keep talking any more shit, thank you so much, Mickey. Go stream all of his back catalogue, and by the time this comes out, Your Body will also be out. And Yours and Ours, and many more shows to come, and a whole career to come, I'm sure. It's all coming to
It's
fruition.
fruit.
It's so fruiting.
It's fruiting.
It's been coming to fruition for over a decade now.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And then it's getting sour and just
no,
fermenting.
No. It's
becoming a fine wine.
It's becoming liquor?
Yeah, I
liqueur?
think so.
Okay, you're becoming
I
a
think so.
lovely liqueur. On that note, thank you so much, Mickey.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all for the next episode.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And again, acknowledging that this was the first episode. Thank you so much to Thomas for recording here in Wisecast. Yeah, you're getting a shout out there. All right, peace, cheers, much love. Oh.
Nice. Well done.
Cheers, man. You too.